Cynthia Nixon plays Gwendolyn Briggs on the Netflix drama series Ratched. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Cynthia. And first of all, this is your first Ryan Murphy project. So first of all, what did you know about Gwendolyn at the start before you signed on? And what is it like now working in the Murphyverse?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very exciting moment when Ryan called me and invited me to play Gwendolyn. It was sort of triply exciting because it was a wonderful job and it was with Ryan Murphy. And it was the first job I had after I ran for governor in New York. So it was kind of like, is there life after running for governor? And Ryan picked up the phone and was like, yes, there is. Come and join us. I knew I had had a meeting. I had a meeting with the casting director who in a funny quirk of fate is actually Sarah Paulson's sister, who is very like Sarah Paulson, except she has dark hair. And Sarah and I have been friends for a long time, but I had never met her sister before. So it was really freaky. It was kind of like, I don't know if you remember on Bewitched, you're too young, I guess. But anyway, Elizabeth McGovern had an alter ego who was like her cousin with dark hair. It was Elizabeth McGovern in a dark wig. And I was like, is this Sarah Paulson playing a trick on me? It just in a wig. But so she had talked to me about a number of roles that were, they were considering me for. But then what I knew about Gwendolyn was that she was a queer woman, that she was in politics, and that she was going to be Mildred's love interest. So that all sounded very exciting.
Yeah. Well, there are indeed some interesting parallels with you and Gwendolyn, not only as queer women, but also, yeah, like you said, being involved in politics and having these kinds of ambitions. And, it was very shortly after you ran for governor that you filmed this. I was actually curious if you found that you were more able to comfortably play this character than maybe you would have been even like 10 years ago.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that show business and politics have so much in common, and also Gwendolyn was more on the kind of the press side, so she's a kind of a person that I run into a lot in my show business life, apart from my political life. But I guess the thing that I really thought of and started working from when I was cast as Gwendolyn is there's a wonderful historical figure named Lorena Hickok, who was a reporter and who was Eleanor Roosevelt's lover. And I thought she's a great prototype. And I learned about her when I played Eleanor Roosevelt back in whatever year that was, 2004, I think. But I thought she was a great prototype for Gwendolyn. She was a queer woman at, similar time period, who had a very full romantic life, but also was very successful professionally, and how she balanced those two things, and how, when Gwendolyn would dress, not when she was going to work, but when she was in her leisure time, the wardrobe department and I, the designers and I, based a lot of how she looked on photographs that we have of Lorena Hickok.
It's interesting. And
yeah.
and we see from the beginning also that Gwendolyn is quite drawn to Mildred. What do you think it was about Mildred that just immediately grabbed her?
I think that, of course, Sarah Paulson in and of herself is not only very beautiful, but very compelling person. So the really easy answer is she's played by Sarah Paulson. Who wouldn't be drawn to her? But I think Mildred's vulnerability, but also Mildred's assurance, incredible poise. And it's kind of the linchpin, I think, of Mildred, and particularly the way Sarah plays her, is that she is at once very frightened and very lost, and completely self-assured and confident. And I think that Mildred feels like an outsider in so many different ways. And I think that's a sort of ineffable essence, but I think Gwendolyn picked up on that right away.
Yeah. Well, speaking a bit more to Sarah Paulson, it seems like she forms these bonds with her co-stars, especially her female co-stars, just from looking at interviews and stuff like that. And the two of you share quite a bit of screen time, obviously. And I'm curious what she's like working with as a scene partner, and then what that dynamic is like when you're not shooting.
Right. So Sarah and I have been friends for a good many years. I think I can't even 15, 20 years now. I've never actually acted with such a good friend that I had never acted with before, that I didn't know through acting with them. You know, the shooting process took place over a long, many months. And I think we were all very different at different points in the filming. I think at the beginning, I think we were all very, nervous. And for me, coming back to acting, and for her taking on this mammoth role, and also executive producing and all of those things. So, and I was very aware of, I was flying back and forth between New York and California. So, and sometimes it was certainly very silly and giddy, and depending on who the other actors were and stuff. And sometimes it was very focused, when we had heavy stuff to do, because certainly there is some very, very heavy stuff in Ratched.
Well, speaking of some heavy stuff, there's a moment in the season where Gwendolyn actually gets shot. And I remember thinking, and even some people had expressed this, that it might be part of this troubling trend that we see sometimes of, lesbian characters on TV dying in these awful ways. But, thankfully it wasn't a fatal shot. You do end up surviving, but that still ends up being like, kind of a turning point for your character in a way. How did you actually react when you found out about that development in the story?
Well, right. I was only actually ever hired for the first season. And so my understanding was that she would die somewhere in the season or at the end of the season. So actually the change was that she didn't. And I think that Ryan and other people on the set, really responded to us as actresses and us as characters. And I think exactly what you're saying. I think it occurred to Ryan that, he went so out of his way to create this incredibly, female driven and queer and, with, I don't know, a very diverse cast, that really took a look at this wonderful story of Cuckoo's Nest. That is a great story with great characters, but certainly you don't have to squint very hard to see the misogyny in it. And sort of said, like, let's look at it from the woman's point of view, and let's look at it from all those women just post World War II who were part of the war effort and saw their horizons broadened, and all those people of color who saw their horizons broadened only as soon as the war was won to have the status quo clamped down on them again. So I think that there's a lot of tragedy in Ratched, so it would make sense for Gwendolyn to die. But I think that Brian Murphy said exactly what you're saying, which is like, we don't want to do that to the audience. We have so chances to see queer love stories, and particularly lesbian love stories, on screen, much less played by two queer actresses. Like, let's not break people's hearts, or at least not yet.
Yeah. Well, maybe you already kind of answered it here, but I don't know how tapped you are with like the fan base, but the fans of the show have definitely connected with this relationship that Mildred and Gwendolyn share. And I'm wondering if you could speak to what makes this relationship so special and so significant in this way that has resonated with the fans.
Well, again, I think there is such a scarcity of lesbian love stories, particularly as played by actual lesbians. But I think too that there is so much whoever one is, there's so much to relate to in this story. It's so hard when you fall for somebody, to put yourself out there. And then if they send you mixed signals, to keep putting yourself out there. And it's hard for us all, you know, in 2021, but to be a queer woman in the late 1940s, you know, how impossible must that have been to find, you know, women that you would fall in love with who would fall in love with you back. So I think it's the, you know, the course of true love never did run smooth. All the treacherous, winding paths and stops and starts and one step forward and two steps back that the romance takes, and then when it finally bursts into bloom, it's so earned and it's so long for, hopefully by the audience and certainly by the characters.
Yeah, I think so. And we assume that you'll be back for a season 2 of Ratched.
Yes,
we don't know.
I will.
Okay,
I will.
good.
Yes, I will.
But what would you be intrigued to explore in the second season? Either just with, you know, with Mildred, or Gwendolyn just in her work, or any aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I'm as much in the dark as you are about what might happen in season 2. I certainly think that what we seem to have shown as the opposing forces of chaos and control, you know, Finn Whitrock and Sophie Okonedo and Amanda Plummer shooting up the town in their jalopy, and then Sarah Paulson and Judy Davis and I having forged this great friendship and this triad. You know, I guess I look forward to those two triads coming up against each other and trying to outwit each other. And but in terms of, like, you know, when we last saw Mildred and Gwendolyn, they were in Mexico. I don't imagine they'll stay there, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, while I have you here, I just have to mention you have 2 very big projects coming up, starting with the Sex and the City revival. I'm sure you can't say much about it, you know, for reasons. But
Yes.
I will ask, what do you think that this reboot or revival or continuation will give you the opportunity to explore that maybe you didn't, or maybe you weren't able to with the original series?
I mean, I think it's certainly been quite a long time, even since we did the last film, but it's been a really long time since we did the series. And I think it's, you know, people love these characters, and it's really fun to pick up with them and see where they are and see what's been happening and what's going to happen. But obviously it was an incredibly white show. And so that will not be true this time, which I think is very overdue. So I personally am very grateful of the chance to continue it and change that about it. And I think that, you know, I think there's the, you know, the world is very different. When we started, you know, filming the series, my oldest child was 8 months old, and he's, you know, he's a fully grown person, 25 years old, living in Chicago. And so the world is very different. And I think that we'll be able to both show that and also show how the three original women and then the other original characters that are coming back are trying to catch up with that and are either, you know, succeeding or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware, they announced that Sara Ramirez is joining the cast today.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
So that's very exciting.
Very exciting. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. Back in 2004, after you won your Emmy for Sex and the City, I don't know if you remember this, but you thanked Gold Derby for helping to pick out your episode submissions.
Yes.
And that was at a time when episode submissions like really mattered a lot when like picking winners and stuff.
Yes.
It's been a little while, but I'm wondering if you could take us back to that night of you winning and also Sarah Jessica Parker winning and all four of you being nominated together for the first time.
Right.
Any memories from that night?
It was just it was an incredible evening. And as you can tell, if you look at my, my win and my acceptance speech, I was prepared, but I certainly did not think I was going to win or have to get up on that stage. I was really blown away. And it was an incredible night and an incredible capper to what had been the whole series was such a glorious season. And the Emmys had always been so good to us. And this was just the cherry on the sundae, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans were excited, especially with that being your last season and everything.
Yeah.
Well, you also have the Gilded Age, which is the new Julian Fellows series coming to HBO, another period piece. Is there anything you can tease about what we should expect from that series and who you play there?
Yes, I think so. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, but yes, if for people who watch Downton Abbey, which I certainly did, it has much in common with that. It's beautifully written, it's beautifully cast, it's gorgeous to look at. And it's about the 1880s in New York, the Gilded Age, when very much like today, there was this incredible sudden burst of wealth and incredible income disparity, and people with so much money on their hands, a certain segment of this population with so much money on their hands, they really didn't know what to do with it. And like Downton Abbey, it's just an incredible ensemble of actors, certainly from television and film, but also most especially from Broadway. And I play Christine Baranski, and I sisters. She is a widow, and I am an old maid. And our niece, who we do not know, comes to live with us because our brother, from whom we are estranged, has died. And so that's sort of the launching for the show.
That's a very good, intriguing tease, I will say.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Just as we wrap up here, I was wondering if you could speak to, because you mentioned earlier the idea of returning to acting, what it is that you look for in scripts and new projects that just really excite you at this point in your career.
I would say, as it always has been true, very juicy characters, and characters who aren't always nice and who aren't always right and who don't always do the right thing. I think, when you're kind of a woman in your 30s, and when you're in your sort of childbearing years, I guess, it's really important that you seem nice. I think we, as a society, we have anxiety about like how interesting a woman who might give birth to a child or might be put in charge of children can be, because we want them to be very, very steady and balanced. And then once you hit, I'm in my 50s. Once you start to hit those ages, you're allowed to be so many other things. You're allowed to show so many more colors and have so many more strings in your bow. So characters that are different from what I've played, and characters that have a lot of facets to them that aren't just one thing. And also always, who do I get to work with? Who do I get to act with? Who do I get to be directed by? What writers are bringing that character and that story into being.
Yeah, I think that is very clear from the cast and the crew that you've been working with lately.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and head to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Cynthia, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you again, Kevin.